Every human mind is a battlefield, a place where countless thoughts, emotions, fears, and impulses collide. The average person is a stranger in their own mind, dragged along by fleeting feelings, scattered focus, and undisciplined desires. They react instead of acting, they panic instead of thinking, they obey instead of commanding. To build a mind so strong that it terrifies people is to first bring order to this inner chaos, to become the undisputed ruler of your own mental kingdom. It is easy to chase success, recognition, and influence in the outer world. It is far harder to wrestle down the storms within, to look into the mirror of your thoughts without flinching, to bend your mind to your conscious will rather than letting it rule you in secret. A strong mind is not merely intelligent. Intelligence without discipline is like a wild horse without a rider. Fast, impressive, but ultimately useless and dangerous. A strong mind is one that is not only aware of its tendencies but able to command them. It is a mind that can endure fear without being paralyzed, can feel anger without being consumed, can know temptation without being enslaved. Strength begins where self-mastery begins. You cannot inspire fear, respect, or awe in others if you are still secretly enslaved to your impulse. You cannot lead others if you cannot lead yourself through your own darkest valleys. Mastering inner chaos requires first that you become an observer of yourself. Not a judge, not a suppressor, but an honest. You must be willing to notice when fear hijacks your thinking, when resentment clouds your judgment, when self-pity creeps into your ambitions. Most people look outward when they suffer, blaming others, blaming circumstances, seeking distraction. To build a terrifying mind, you must first learn to turn inward and see with brutal clarity the origins of your suffering within your own patterns of thought. Each time you face the chaos inside without turning away, you grow stronger. But mastery is not mere observation, it is command. To observe your fear and yet refuse to obey it. To notice your anger and yet choose a higher response. To feel temptation but not be ruled by it. You must become the architects of your own mind, building new habits of thought brick by brick, choosing discipline over chaos, wisdom over impulse, purpose over pleasure. Over time, you no longer have to wrestle your mind into order. You wake each day clear, focused, unshaken by trivial distractions. The mind that terrifies others, not loud or aggressive. It is calm. It is the calm of a deep ocean whose surface may be stirred but whose depths remain unmoved. Most people live in emotional shallows, thrown into confusion by the slightest wind. When they meet someone who is not shaken by anger, flattery, rejection, or fear, they instinctively feel awe, even fear, because they sense an unbreakable will. They cannot understand it, and what they do not understand, they fear. This strength is invisible, yet unmistakable. You do not need to announce it. You do not need to prove it. The very way you move, speak, and act will carry the weight of a mind that has come. When the world rages and others panic, your steadiness will speak louder than 1,000 words. When others look to blame, you will look to build. When others seek escape, you will seek understanding. In mastering the chaos within, you will have earned the only power that truly matters, the power to rule yourself completely. Most people walk through life burdened by invisible chains they refuse to acknowledge. They hide their fears under false bravado, their anger beneath politeness, their envy behind fake smiles. They suppress the darker impulses they believe are shameful, thinking that by denying them make them disappear. But the truth is far more dangerous. What is hidden grows in power. What is denied takes root deeper in the subconscious, shaping actions, decisions, and emotions in ways that escape conscious control. A mind that terrifies others is not a mind that denies its darkness. It is a mind that has faced it without fear, understood it without judgment, and mastered it without suppression. The shadow is everything you are but refuse to see. It holds the instincts you were taught to be ashamed of, the rage, the greed, the selfishness, the lust, the fear. But it also holds your hidden strengths, your ability to protect yourself, your creative practice self, your creative power, your raw vitality. When you ignore your shadow, you become weak, fragmented, easily manipulated because you're at war with yourself. You present a mask to the world. But inside chaos festers, you lash out without understanding why. Why you sabotage your own dreams. You cower when strength is needed. You project your own darkness onto others and blame them for what you refuse to confront in yourself. To build a mind so strong it terrifies people, you must turn and face your shadow. You must enter the places within yourself that you have been taught to fear, not to indulge them, but to understand them. You must be willing to look at your own jealousy, your own rage, your own fear of insignificance, and admit without flinching that these things live within. In doing so, you strip them of their power to control you from the shadows. What you bring into the light can no longer rule you from the dark. Embracing the shadow is not about becoming cruel or selfish. It is about reclaiming the full spectrum of your humanity. When you accept that you are capable of anger, you gain the ability to set powerful boundaries without guilt. When you accept your own selfish instincts, you learn to meet your needs without exploitation or shame. When you accept your failure, you find the courage to act boldly even while afraid. In every hidden weakness lies a hidden strength waiting to be harnessed. Those who walk in full awareness of their shadow possess an authenticity and solidity that does find both magnetic and unsettling. People can sense when someone's integrated their shadow. Such a person radiates a quiet power. They are not easily shocked because they have already seen the depths within themselves. They are not easily manipulated because they are not hiding from any part of their own nature. They are not easily provoked because they have already befriended the very emotions others try to weaponize against them. There is a calmness to them that unnerves those who rely on fear and guilt to control others. There is a strength in their gaze, a firmness in their voice, a depth in their presence that speaks of battles fought and won in the unseen realms of the soul. The weak mind tries to project only goodness, only light, pretending that darkness does not exist. The strong mind knows that darkness and light exist together within every soul and accepts this without shame. In this acceptance lies tremendous power. You no longer fear the parts of yourself others use to control you. You no longer react blindly to insults, threats, or manipulations. You move from a place of wholeness, not fracture. You act from conscious choice, not from suppressed compulsions. In embracing your shadow, you become a whole person. And whole persons are rare and dangerous to a world built on fear, shame, and pretense. Wholeness gives birth to a mind that is free, clear, and immensely powerful. It is a power that needs no outward show, no intimidation, no domination, because it is rooted in the deepest acceptance of. It is a power that terrifies not because it threatens harm, but because it reveals truth. Truth about yourself, truth about others, truth about the games people play to avoid looking into their own darkness. When you have faced and embraced your own shadow, you become someone who cannot be easily deceived, controlled, or broken. It remains free because it is anchored not in the shifting opinions of the world, but in the immovable reality of self-knowledge. In ruthless self-honesty, you become a mirror, not only for yourself, but for everyone you meet. Some will hate you for it, others will fear you, a few will seek to learn from you, but none will ever forget you. A mind that refuses to lie to itself is rare and precious, and because it is so rare, it is powerful almost beyond understanding. It does not conquer through domination, it conquers through undeniable presence, through the silent authority of one who has mastered the most difficult task of all, to know oneself completely, and yet still to stand, still to move forward, still to create without apology. The need for approval is one of the most subtle and insidious chains that binds the human spirit. From the moment we are born, we are conditioned to seek validation from others. As children, we seek our parents' approval. As we grow, we seek the approval of our peers, our teachers, our partners, our society. We are trained to define our worth by the opinions of others, to measure our value by how well we are liked, praised, or accepted. Yet, in this endless pursuit, we lose the essence of who we are. The more we seek external validation, the more we tie our worth to something outside of ourselves, something fleeting, unreliable, and ultimately out of our control. To build a mind so strong it terrifies people, you must reach the place where you are no longer driven by the need for approval. You must sever the invisible strings that tether your worth to the opinions and judgments of others. This detachment does not come from indifference or arrogance. It comes from an inner certainty, an inner knowing that your value is inherent, independent of external force. When you stop seeking approval, you become free. You free yourself from the anxiety of whether others like you, from the fear of rejection, from the need to prove your worth. A person who seeks approval is like a tree that sways with every gust of wind. They are shaped by the opinions of others, and their sense of self is constantly in flux. One day they are high, inflated by praise. The next they are low, deflated by criticism. Their thoughts, their actions, their choices are all guided by the invisible pressure to fit into a mold created by someone else. But the person who no longer seeks approval is like an oak tree, firm and grounded. They stand tall not because they are concerned with how others perceive them, but because they know who they are and what they stand for. When you are no longer at the mercy of external validation, you cease to live in reaction to the world. You become the creator of your own life. You choose your path, your goals, your values, not based on what others think you should do, but on what is true to your soul. This detachment from approval gives you the freedom to make decisions based on your deepest desires, your own vision of the world, and your own sense of purpose. It removes the pressure to conform, to please, to fit in. Instead, it empowers you to follow your unique path, to carve out your own space in the world, regardless of who agrees or disagrees with you. When you no longer need the approval of others, you become unapologetically yourself. You become authentic, and authenticity is a magnet. People are drawn to it because it is rare and powerful. The most dangerous people are not those who act with aggression or force, but those who act with unwavering authenticity. The mind that no longer seeks validation exudes an undeniable confidence, a grounded sense of self that others cannot help but respect. It is the quiet confidence of someone who knows they're enough, who knows their worth does not depend on anyone else's recognition or acceptance. This detachment from validation also makes you invulnerable to manipulation. Those who seek approval can easily be influenced by flattery, guilt, or criticism. But someone who does not need approval cannot be swayed by such tactics. They are impervious to the attempts of others to control or direct their actions. They stand firm in their beliefs, their decisions, and their direction, because they are not trying to please anyone but themselves. This makes them formidable. It makes them unpredictable, because they will not bend to the will of others. They cannot be intimidated or coerced. They do not fear rejection because they know their worth is not up for negotiation. Moreover, when you stop seeking validation, you stop giving power away. When your worth is tied to the opinions of others, you are essentially handing over the reins of your emotional and mental well-being. The more you seek others' approval, the more control you give them over your life. But when you no longer need that approval, you take back control. You are the master of your own fate. No one can take that from you. This inner sovereignty is a power few can challenge, for it is rooted in self-ownership. When you are no longer at the mercy of others' judgments, you also find peace. Emotional highs and lows that come from constantly seeking validation disappear. You stop reacting, stop chasing, stop pleasing. You simply live, and in that living you radiate strength, not because you try to impress others, but because you are already complete. Your mind becomes free of the noise of external opinions, and it becomes a quiet, powerful force that others recognize but cannot influence. It is this inner strength, this detachment from the need for approval, that makes you a presence to be reckoned with. It is not loud, it is not brash, but it is undeniable. We live in a world constantly evaluating us. The opinions of others, whether in our personal relationships, our careers, or the broader social sphere, shape much of how we think and act. From an early age, we are conditioned to seek approval, to perform for praise, to be validated by external sources. The desire for acceptance and recognition becomes deeply ingrained in our psyche. But this hunger for external validation comes at a high price. It robs us of our inner peace, our autonomy, and ultimately, our true power. To build a mind so strong it terrifies others, one must transcend the need for approval. This is not a rejection of others' feedback, but rather a detachment from the need for it. External validation is a shifting, fragile foundation. It is as if we are constructing our sense of self on a house of cards, always at the mercy of the whims of others. One gust of wind, one piece of criticism or praise, and the entire structure can collapse. Those who seek constant approval are always in flux, reacting to the judgments of others, attempting to fit into molds that were never meant for them. Never meant for them. They lose themselves in the pursuit of acceptance, becoming empty vessels shaped by external forces. But the mind that no longer seeks approval is solid, immovable, and at peace. The person who no longer depends on the affirmation of others walks through the world with a quiet confidence that others find deeply unsettling. When you detach from the need for approval, you become immune to manipulation. You stop seeking to please others, to conform to expectations, to meet the standards set by society or those around you. Instead, you become anchored in your own sense of worth. You build your identity from the inside out, not from the opinions of others, but from a deep understanding and acceptance of who you truly are. This detachment is not about arrogance or indifference. It is about self-sufficiency. You no longer rely on external sources to tell you who you are. You don't look to others to define your value. You become the creator of your own identity. And this is an immensely powerful position. Those who no longer seek approval are no longer living in reaction to the world. They live from a place of purpose, choosing their actions based on their own inner compass, not based on how they will be perceived by others. When you detach from you open the door to true freedom, the door to truth. You're no longer swayed by the judgments of others, which means you are no longer tethered to a life of anxiety and insecurity. You stop second-guessing your choices based on what others think. You no longer hesitate or hold back because you fear what someone might say or think. Instead, you act boldly, knowing that your worth does not depend on the approval of others. This is the essence of power, to act from a place of inner certainty, and to speak and move through the world with the quiet knowledge that you are enough, that you are complete, regardless of anyone else's opinion. A mind that is detached from the need for approval is a force to be reckoned with. It radiates authenticity, and authenticity is magnetic. People may not always agree with someone who does not seek their approval, but they will respect them. The person who does not seek validation operates from a place of clarity and strength. Others may feel threatened by this presence, for it calls into question their own dependence on external validation. It is uncomfortable to meet someone who has no need for your approval because it forces you to question your own motives. It reveals how much of our lives are shaped by the desire for recognition and acceptance. Moreover, detaching from approval makes you invulnerable to criticism. When you are no longer seeking the approval of others, insults or negative feedback lose their power to wound you. You do not take criticism personally because your sense of worth is not wrapped up in others' opinions. You understand that criticism is often more a reflection of the critic than of you. Your comfort is not shaken by negativity because it does not depend on others' validation. You are grounded in your own self-worth, and this foundation makes you unshakable. This kind of detachment also removes the burden of pleasing everyone. The fear of rejection often drives people to say yes when they want to say no, to conform when they want to rebel, to suppress their true desires to fit in. But a mind that no longer seeks approval is free from these constraints. You no longer have to cater to the expectations of others, and you can live a life true to yourself. This creates a sense of peace and contentment that is rare in a world obsessed with the approval of others. The person who detaches from the need for validation is not beholden to. They move through life not as a puppet to be controlled by external forces, but as a sovereign being, the master of their own destiny. This is why they are terrifying to others, because their strength does not rely on external validation and they cannot be controlled. They are free, and freedom is the ultimate form of power. By stepping out of the cycle of seeking approval, you reclaim your autonomy. You stop allowing the opinions of others to dictate your action. This is when true power emerges, not the power to dominate or control, but the power to be fully, unapologetically yourself. And it is this strength, this unwavering authenticity, that terrifies those who still live in the prison of needing others' approval. Every person carries within them a shadow, a part of themselves they would rather not acknowledge. This darkness consists of all the rejected, denied, and suppressed aspects of the self. Fears, the weaknesses, the impulses, the desires it deems unacceptable or undesirable. Most people spend their lives running from this shadow, denying, attempting to remain a good or a pure in the eyes of others. But the mind that is truly formidable, the mind that terrifies, is the one that does not shy away from its own darkness. It is the one that has looked into the abyss within and made peace with it, acknowledging its presence and integrating it into the whole of their being. To become powerful, you must first accept that the darkness within is not something to be feared, but something to be understood. The more you run from it, the more it controls you. It seeps into your life in ways you cannot see, affecting your choices, your relationships, and your sense of self. It shows up in moments of anger, in jealousy, in frustration, in every instance where your reaction is disproportionate to the situation. These are the signals of your inner darkness, and if you fail to acknowledge them, they will continue to govern your life from the shadows. The darkness within is not something that can be eliminated or fixed. It is not a flaw to be corrected. It is simply a part of who you are, as much a part of your nature as your life. When you try to repress it, you only strengthen its grip. But when you acknowledge it, when you confront it without judgment or fear, it loses its power over you. In facing the darkness, you gain control over it. You become the master of it rather than its servant. And this is when true strength is born. The process of embracing your inner darkness is not an easy one. It requires a willingness to look at your own imperfections, your own destructive impulses, without flinching. It demands that you accept your flaws as part of your humanity. To deny your darkness is to live a half-life, constantly fighting against yourself, constantly trying to suppress parts of you that will always resurface in one way or another. But when you embrace it, when you bring it to the surface and integrate it, you free yourself from its unconscious control. A person who embraces their darkness becomes whole. They no longer live in fear of their own impulses. They no longer hide from the parts of themselves that they fear will be rejected by the world. Instead, they have the courage to face their shadow, to accept it as a part of who they are, and to use it to their advantage. In this way, their darkness becomes a source of strength rather than weakness. It becomes the fuel for their inner power. This acceptance of the dark aspects of the self also fosters an incredible sense of inner peace. You stop fighting against the past and step into it. This inner harmony allows you to act with clarity, free from the internal conflict that constantly arises from trying to deny parts of yourself. You are no longer at war with your own nature. You are at peace with it. And this peace radiates outward, making you a force to be reckoned with. Moreover, the ability to embrace your darkness gives you a unique power in the world. Those who are afraid of their own shadows are easily manipulated. They are vulnerable to shame, guilt, and fear. But a person who has embraced their inner darkness is invulnerable to these things. They have faced their deepest fears and come through them stronger. They no longer rely on the validation of others to feel whole. They are no longer afraid of judgment, because they have already judged themselves and come to terms with the truth of who they are. This makes them unshakable. Furthermore, embracing your inner darkness allows you to relate to others on a deeper level. When you accept your flaws, you no longer need to project an image of perfection onto the world. You no longer need to hide your vulnerabilities or pretend to be something you are not. This authenticity creates a deep sense of connection with others. People are drawn to those who are unapologetically themselves because they are rare in a world where so many hide behind masks. The mind that has embraced its darkness is a magnet for respect because it's real, raw, and undeniable. To be truly invincible, you must first embrace the shadow within. Only then can you walk through the world without fear, without pretense, without the constant need to prove yourself. Only then can you be free of the chains that bind most people. The fear of judgment, the shame of imperfection, the desire for approval. And in that freedom, you will find the power to shape your life on your own terms, to act with authority and confidence, to become a force that terrifies those who still live in the prison of their own self-deception. The darkness within does not define you. It does not control you. It is simply a part of the human experience. When you accept it, you transcend it. When you integrate it, you become whole.